indictments matter. No matter what the outcome, when the federal government, with all its power, comes brought to bear on you, it's a bomb that goes off in your life. And everything is different from that point on. And the punishment, the consequences, they start now.
Over 1 million Americans face sentencing every year, and it will be the most important day of their lives. But we don't fully understand the system, how broken it is, and what we can do to make it better. I'm Doug Passon. I'm a 25-year criminal defense lawyer and a sentencing expert. My goal is to bring more awareness, more fairness, and more humanity to the sentencing process. So, are you ready? Then let's get set for sentencing.
Good Friday afternoon, Mark Allenbaugh. How are you?
Well, my head is swimming. This has been quite a day, quite 24 hours.
Mine is too. And suffice it to say, helping us get set for sentencing today, you know what we're talking about. What else could we be talking about? It's Friday, June 9th, 2023. Yesterday, we found out that the former president, Donald J. Trump, was indeed indicted federally. And then today, the indictment was unsealed, and we know the specifics. And so we had to get together on this Friday afternoon to sort through all of this. And I looked through, now we did this once when the search warrant was issued, and it was actually back in August of 2022. Wow. And I think it was a Sunday afternoon that we had to get together and talk about it. But I said, I needed a little help to get through that one. And if you remember, it was Jefferson's Ocean bourbon. But today, and actually since August, I'm off the bourbon. I quit. I decided it was super unhealthy for me. So now all I drink is tequila.
Very good. Muy bien, muy bien.
Yes, muy bien. Not only is it tequila, but it's high proof. That's how serious this stuff is.
Is it Blanco or Reposado?
Blanco? It's a Blanco.
Oh, okay, well,
Blanco's my fave.
You'll have to upgrade to like a Reposado or a Añejo.
Why do you think that's an upgrade, by the way?
Well, it's aged more and you get a little color and more of a bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some, I guess, yeah, okay. I would argue robust. That the clear is just simple and elegant, but I love them all. I really do. I've become a maniac with regard to tequila. And you know what I figured out, by the way? And I guess this is a good conversation to have before we dig into the serious stuff. And who knows if this makes it onto the podcast. But I figured out in my research, I've got really into tequila. Tequila is a lot like lawyers.
Okay.
Everybody thinks the fanciest bottle on the shelf is the best tequila to drink. You know, the most expensive one with the prettiest package.
Right.
And sometimes we feel that way about lawyers too. The prettiest waiting room in the law firm, the fanciest suit, the highest hourly rates, and all that other stuff. But the truth is, the real deal tequila is not the most expensive. It's not in a fancy bottle.
Right.
It's not full of additives, fillers, and all the stuff that makes it fake tequila. It's just very, very pure, natural quality, and they don't need to show off. And so, think about that. Little Friday afternoon tequila wisdom.
Well, they say the same thing about wine. Just there's a very low correlation between price and quality.
Ooh, that's tasty. Anyway, so here we go. Now, I do want to tell everybody what we're going to try to do is keep this short. We're never able to do that, Mark and I, but we're going to try because we really did a deep dive into a lot of these same issues back in August. It's episode 13. And I think I'm probably just going to attach it to this one. So when we get done, you can keep listening if you want. But we talked about everything there. And that was called Mar-a-lago going to prison, ? Because we didn't know. And we didn't know a lot of stuff back then. We only knew there was a search warrant with 3 counts, possible charges, that there was probable cause to believe a crime to support that search warrant. But now we know more. We know he's indicted on 37 counts. And we know that the presumption of innocence still attaches. So we'll put that right up
Yep.
in the front. But in that last episode, we really did. We hit on guidelines, we hit on bail issues, we hit on possible sentencing arguments, we hit on life expectancy, we
Yep.
hit on conditions of confinement if he did end up to prison. So we really did hit on a lot of that. So I don't think we're going to repeat all that here.
Yeah,
we're going to do some updates. So let's jump right in, because everybody who knows Mark Allenbaugh knows that he's a guidelines guru and a sentencing statistics guru. And so he has read the 49-page indictment.
Yep.
And he has run the numbers under the guidelines, and he's
Yes.
got some numbers. So last time we did this, we had 3 possible crimes. Now we have 37 counts. So what's different?
Well, let's just look at them real quick here. I'm going to do a screen share. So luckily for us, Jack Smith helped us by writing a little cheat sheet at the end of the indictment here of the 37 counts. So one of the things that's different, of course, is the 37 counts. But what he provided us here, very easy peasy, is the statutory maxima for each of the different statutes in the various counts. So counts 1 through 31, those are all your willful retention of national defense information, your 793 counts. They carry 10 years each. So right there, the overall statutory maximum is 310 years. And then we have the conspiracy to, are you able to see this? Do I have this?
I am able to see that. And
Okay,
and so these are like what people are calling the Espionage Act counts,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so each one of these, there's 31. You say each one is 10-year max, but
Correct.
would they ever stack these, meaning 10 plus 10 plus 10 on down, or would it be concurrent? Is the max? Why is the max not just 10 years and all run concurrently?
Well, generally it is. But as I'm going to explain, this is one of the rare cases where they are going to stack, because kind of giving it away, the way I calculate the guidelines, and I'll show you this, he's going to come out at a 43, which is the top, which is life. And the problem for him, oddly enough, is that none of these statutes have a life maximum. So if there's no life maximum penalty or life term maximum penalty, then what the guidelines say is you stack all of the statutes consecutively.
Gotcha.
And that's what's going to go on here. So anyway, so just to finish up here. So
Yep.
Counts 32, 33, 34, or 32, 33, and 34. Those are all of our obstruction of justice counts, or withholding documents, the 1512 statute. And those, and I think, let me see here. I also think, yeah. And then 1519 also. And all those carry 20-year stat maxes. So that's going to add another 80 years on to that 310. So now we're at 390 years, and 36 and 37 carry 5 years each. So we're now at 400 years. So the legal maximum that the court can sentence Trump to, if he's convicted of all of these counts, is 400 years. So
That's a lot of time.
it's a lot of time. Yeah. So, but I think, as I recall, just doing the life expectancy, I think pretty much anything over 5 years is going to be a de facto life sentence.
Yeah.
So, this it's a little absurd to even talk about 400 years.
Right.
So let's
But
just,
the takeaway is,
Yeah.
If he's convicted, there's a very good chance he'll be not only going to prison, but staying there for the rest of his life.
correct. Yeah. I
Okay.
think if he is convicted, even just of half of these, it's a near certainty he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Let's look at now the guidelines. So the way the guidelines work, for those who don't understand the guidelines, just kind of quickly, what you do is you look at these various statutes here, and you find out what guideline. There's all these sentencing guidelines, dozens of them. You find out which guideline that particular statute is sentenced under. And it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily go to the statute that has the highest maximum. So like, for example, the obstruction of justice here, the 1512, that carries a 20-year. So even though that's a more serious offense than just a single count of the national defense information or the 793 count, as it turns out, the 793 offenses are actually treated far more severely than obstruction counts. So where you end up going, just to try to make it a little bit more simple, is the Gathering National Defense Information guideline. And you can see it's a very simple guideline. Some of the guidelines are extremely complex, like the fraud guideline that goes on for pages and pages and pages. This one is very simple. You start off at a base offense level, either 35 if top secret information was gathered, or 30 if it wasn't.
Yeah.
And there is top secret information referenced all over the indictment. So it is clearly he's going to clearly start out at a 35, which is bad.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, for point of reference, there's 43 levels. So he's starting 8 shy of the very tippy top, but we got more to go.
Right. So yeah, I have the sentencing table up here for everyone to see, but yeah, 35 is way down here. So just right now, the guidelines are at 168 to 210 months. So once you're out of 35, then you go to other guidelines. There might be other things to add on. They're called SOCs, specific offender characteristics or sentencing enhancements. So here, just a kind of a quick and dirty calculation I put together. So again, we're going to gather the national defense information under 2M3.2. We started at 35. Now, one of the things that I had not anticipated last summer when we were doing this is that there's going to be a conspiracy count. He has a co-defendant, his valet, and there may be other related cases too, and there may be unindicted co-conspirators, and I'm probably guessing there's a lot. But he has this one other conspirator, and once a conspiracy is charged, then this thing called role in the offense comes into play, where if you play a higher leadership role or management role in the offense, you get a higher offense level. So if you're a leader, you get a 4. If you're mid-management, you get a 3. And if you're just like a supervisor or organizer, you get a 2.
Yeah.
Well, clearly he was the leader behind all of this real massive, taking the documents and hiding them. And it's all through the indictment. He's directing his valet, put this over here. And he was directing a lot of other people too. And also directing his attorneys to lie.
I was just going to say, there's some reporting today where he's saying to the lawyers, can't we just make all this disappear? Like Hillary's lawyers did with her 30,000 emails.
Right.
That he asked Russia to find.
Right. So he's going to get a leadership role. That's another 4 levels. He's going to get an abuse of trust. And just to confirm on this, that this would apply here, I went back to Reality Winner. She was the gal a few years ago that was working as a contractor. She was kind of like a Snowden, if you will. She was working for a contractor at a military base and handling a bunch of classified information. And this was towards the beginning of the Trump administration, and she saw evidence that the Russians were hacking into hacking into social media and all this other stuff and helping Trump become president. So she disclosed that she got all these secret documents and stuff and ended up disclosing it to the press. She was caught, and she was sentenced under a slightly less onerous guideline, 2M3.3, which starts at a 29 instead of a 35, mainly because what she had disclosed did not involve top secret information like Trump. At any rate, she got an abuse of trust, and it's pretty easy to understand why. If you have a clearance like Trump did, and not only did Trump have a clearance, but he was also, the president of the United States, be there to protect us all.
It doesn't get more abusive of
I don't think
yes, because it's arguably the greatest access of any American citizen to the most classified data and the highest level of trust placed in a person that you could imagine. So that's a no-brainer from where
that's a no-brainer.
A no-brainer.
And then, of course, the obstruction of justice. He's going to get a +2 for obstruction of justice because he has actually been presumably he'll be convicted for these charges. He's charged with obstruction of justice. But as we know, even if he's acquitted of these obstruction of justice charges, it could still come back and bite him at sentencing, because at least as it stands right now, acquitted conduct sentencing still is constitutional. But at any rate, so he's going to have another +2 for obstruction of justice, given those obstruction of justice charges. And so that totals up to 43.
And by the way, just from a layperson's perspective, people have to understand that obstruction element is one of the big differentiators between other people who retained documents and gave them back.
Right.
That
exactly.
This was a deliberate, willful evading of process. So without that, he arguably might not be in the trouble he's in, but
right.
There's no way he ain't getting those 2 levels, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's no way. No, there's no way. And before I leave the screen, you and I have spoken about the Zippo in the past, the zero-point
offender. Yep.
Now, as it stands right now, Trump hasn't been convicted of any crimes. He's under indictment up in New York State Court, but he has yet to be convicted of any crimes. So presumably he has 0 criminal history points. And if you have 0 criminal history points and you meet a bunch of other criteria, you're eligible now, at least starting November 1. I'm sure he's going to be, if he's sentenced, it's going to be after November 1, but beginning November 1, there's this new 0-point offender downward adjustment. It's a 2-level downward adjustment that he may be eligible for. But the way the commission wrote the criteria, it seems that if you get a roll adjustment, that 2, 3, or 4 level, then you're not eligible for the Zippo. So I didn't put that in here, but he may have an argument for that. He may have an argument that the leadership role alone doesn't preclude him from getting that 2-point adjustment. And that can
be, again, in the grand scheme of things, that 2 levels isn't going to do much for him.
It's not going to do much. It's not going to really do much for him. But that's what I was just going to show you, because here at a 43, he's life. At a 41, he's 25 years, which is life also, as far as he's concerned. So it's not a big deal. And I'm also presuming that he's not going to plead guilty. If he pled guilty, he could get up to 3 levels off. He definitely would get 2. And what was interesting, Reality Winner's case, she only got 2 levels off. She pled guilty. She pled guilty to 793 count, that 10-year stat max. But she for some reason, only received a 2 levels off for acceptance. But nonetheless, part of her plea agreement, she entered into a binding C1C agreement that sometimes people don't realize exist. They should. But these binding plea agreements you can bind the court to a particular sentence. You don't have to worry about all the guideline shenanigans. But she ended up her plea agreement locked in the court to a 63-month sentence, which was significantly below her guideline range anyway. So losing that third point. Just
for a point of comparison, she pled guilty. He won't, I'm sure.
Right.
Well, you never know. But what was her sentence?
63 months.
So she got just north of 5 years.
Just north of 5 years, yes.
For conduct that's arguably far less.
It was far less.
Far less egregious than what's happening here.
Yeah, it was.
So that's going to
document.
What's that?
It was one document, as I recall.
Yeah. One document. And arguably her motivation is selfless. Because this is information she believed was important to put into the public sort of
and Congress ended up doing its own independent investigation and vindicated what she was saying. There was a big Senate, and I think it was a bicameral report, as I recall, confirming everything that she had found, that she had disclosed.
So she arguably had did the wrong thing for maybe the right reason.
Right. The
big question, well, I have 2 big questions that still remain, is why does he have all this stuff? What is he doing with it? This so sensitive, so secret. Is it ego? Does he want to make money? Does he want to be paid? I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to know. And I don't think it matters for these charges and these guidelines, although I think it matters in the grand scheme of thing when you're facing sentencing, because
Yes.
motivation matters.
Yeah.
The history, and the nature and circumstances of the offense under 3553 matter.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
he was a couple of times in the indictment, it does speak to the fact that he was showing top secret information to third parties that did not have security clearances. And it's really interesting that he was doing that because Jack, our special prosecutor, points this out on page 17 of the indictment. Trump showed the PAC representative, his PAC, his Political Action Committee representative, a classified map of country B, and told the PAC representative that he should not be showing the map to the PAC representative and not to get too close.
Yeah.
You know, he's like a little kid in the candy store. It's like, look what I have. And what I found really interesting about this is just the next paragraph is what the special prosecutor points out. On February 16th, 2017, 4 years before Trump's disclosures of classified information set forth above, Trump said at a press conference, the first thing I thought of when I heard about it is, how does the press get this information that's classified? How do they do it? You know why? Because it's an illegal process and the press should be ashamed of themselves. But more importantly, and I highlight this part, the people that gave out that information to the press should be ashamed of themselves. Really ashamed.
Really ashamed.
Really ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I don't think Trump himself is even capable of. But I just love the fact that here he is, you know, the special prosecutor using Trump's own words against him for doing exactly what he was saying was shameful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which of course goes to his intent. He knows full well that what he's doing is not allowed.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, I said that the big question, I had a couple big questions. One is the why. Why is he doing this? Why does he have this? We may not know. But the other big question is, and it goes back to reality. When you said she got 5 years and she's just John Q. citizen. Now I want to know who is Donald J. Trump at this moment in time? Is he John Q. citizen?
He's John
or
Q.
is
citizen.
he a former president? Is he entitled to special treatment from straight up from now till the sentencing time? Is he going to be treated like every other person? And so the first question I have, we'll go back to reality, Winter, because Trump received what's called a summons, meaning, hey, there's this 37 count indictment that could land you in prison for the rest of your life and the next life as well. But just kind of show up to the court next week and we'll sort it through. Is that what happened to reality?
No. Yeah, she didn't get a nice invitation to go to court to, take a look at this espionage charge against her. She had about a dozen FBI agents show up at her house unannounced and grill her for about 4 or 5 hours and then arrest her. And then she did not see daylight again, or she wasn't free again until she was released from prison.
In my life as a federal defense lawyer, a lot of my clients for many years were indigent. I could count on 2 hands and 2 feet probably the number of times that I've had those folks be able to just kind of show up and sort it out. They've been arrested. They've been brought into court in chains. Now they get a detention hearing, which we talked about in episode 13, and I won't dwell on it, but and I'm able to get them out a lot of times so that they're free while the case is going on, but they were still brought into court in shackles.
Yeah.
And that's not happening here. Okay. So,
I mean, he even got, I'm sorry to interrupt, Doug, but he even received a target letter. And most people don't even receive target letters. And you're lucky if you receive something like that. And that gives you at least a chance to try to cooperate and enter a plea. Yeah, but he had that opportunity, and now he's also being extended the courtesy of having another weekend before he has to go face the music on Tuesday.
And the music looks like this. He'll be processed through. He'll have to go to the marshal's, fingerprint, maybe photograph. But the real question I have now, make a prediction. Does the government seek detention? Because if the government doesn't ask for pretrial detention, it's not even an issue. You don't even have to have a hearing, right?
Right.
So what do you think? Are they going
Well,
to ask for it?
it is probably one of the most difficult decisions I think the special prosecutor is going to have right now, because one of the things that does make Trump unique is not the fact that he's a former president. It's the fact that he's actively running for president and is likely the lead candidate for a major political party. It will be something if he is remanded. I will tell you that, because if he was anybody else, he would already be in custody. So that, I think, has to weigh, that has to weigh on the special prosecutor to I think a large degree, because if he does ask for Trump to be remanded and Trump is remanded, you're basically killing off the ability for Trump to attend rallies and further his campaign. You're precluding him from campaigning at all. So that's something, that I think the prosecutor needs to think about. And of course, January 6th is not that far in the past, in the rear view mirror. And Trump, for the last 24 hours, has been riling up his base. Yeah. So, I think there's some reality, excuse the pun, but I think there's some reality, pragmatic issues that the special prosecutor needs to consider about remanding him, because it could create, a firestorm. I think what's going to happen, I don't think the special prosecutor is going to ask that Trump be remanded, but rather he's going to ask for some very restrictive conditions on him. And part of the reason kind of makes sense, though, because Trump already has a phalanx of Secret Service agents around him all the time, which was really interesting because those Secret Service agents are law enforcement officers, and 20 of them were interviewed by the grand jury, where I think they got a lot of this information for the indictment. So he's basically kind of maybe not in a prison, but in a virtual prison already, with all that Secret Service detail around him. He's certainly not going to be able to flee the country, not with his Secret Service detail. Maybe if he tried to get rid of his Secret Service detail, which he can, he's not required to have them. But I think that would be a major red flag. And if he did that, he probably would be remanded. But as long as he has that detail, and I think the special prosecutor is going to ask for some restrictions in terms of his ability to use his Twitter, his Truth Social, and what he can say and stuff like that, kind of like what happened up in New York. But whether he could do that.
And just to refresh, there's two big issues at a detention hearing to decide whether you should be in or out pending trial. One is flight risk, and the other is danger.
Correct. And he's both. He's definitely both.
Yes, but the law also says that even if you find he's one or both, if there are measures that can be put in place that are less restrictive than confinement, then do that. And so the question is, what can that be? And I agree with you. I think that the prosecutor comes in with a whole bunch of suggested restrictions. And if I were the defense lawyer, which I'm not, thank goodness, there's such a thing as third-party custodian, which is basically you say, we're going to designate this person out there to be sort of responsible for notifying the court if they think the client's going to flee or not show up for court or whatever else. So you mentioned the Secret Service detail. If I'm the judge, if I'm the defense lawyer, I would say, Judge, we're going to make every single Secret Service agent on his detail a third-party custodian. So they watch him 24/7. They're protecting him, and they have, because they didn't before, arguably, but they would then now have a legal obligation to notify the court if something's going south. And that might be persuasive. I don't know. I'd kind of like an ankle bracelet, but that's just me. And the violence thing is another issue. Now there may be an argument that because these are not crimes of violence and there's no element of violence in the offense, that that prong may not be a consideration in detention hearings. I've argued that successfully before, but that said, there will be violence.
Yeah.
And there will be him already fanning the flames of violence.
You know,
And
he's
he
been doing
just
that.
posting on True Social pictures of him and talking about his wife, pictures of Jack Smith talking about his wife, everything else.
He will definitely be on a short leash, much shorter than the New York judge, the New York State judge has him on, because I think part of his bond there was that he couldn't go out, he couldn't disclose certain things about the case and whatnot.
Mhm.
And then within minutes, I think he was out there posting stuff about the judge and the judge's family and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. And then when he got the the E. Jean Carroll case, that was a civil case, but he lost that, got a $5 million judgment against him for slander and stuff.
Yeah.
You think that would have shut him up, but it didn't. He was on
Didn't.
CNN the very next day slandering her again. So I
And
don't know how
that-
well he could follow direction. That's going to be
No,
the big
and
question.
no lawyer is going to be able to control him either. But
No.
but that raises another question, because the judge in New York is low threshold for nonsense. He brought him in to instruct him on his obligations under
Yep.
discovery. But we just found out today that not only is he charged in Florida on his home turf, but he's for now back in front of Aileen Cannon, who is the judge who originally was handpicked by Trump and his lawyers to try to fight or contravene the search warrant in this very case.
Yes.
And she, by anyone's assessment, seemed to be very pro-Trump in her rulings,
Yes.
which were smacked down by the Court of Appeals. But it was actually kind of jaw-dropping what was happening there. And he's back in that court for now. So A, do you think he'll stay there? And B, what do you think about how that's going to go?
Well, that's a good question. I think most people would want to jump the gun and say, oh, she needs to recuse herself and whatnot. But bad rulings are not a ground for recusal. Even the fact that he appointed her may not be a ground for recusal, just on the face of it.
Yeah.
Now, she may want to recuse herself for other reasons. I don't see Jack Smith moving for her recusal, at least at this stage, not this stage, not this early. So I think she's going to be with the case at least for a while, unless she starts making some rulings or statements on the record that show a clear bias. I think this is the judge that he may end up with that may sentence him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I first heard it was going back there, my initial reaction was, oh man, like my heart dropped into my stomach. But on reflection, I think it's fine. I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with him being in Florida for the simple fact that anytime Trump is ever held to account in a court of law, it's because the judge is biased and the jury's biased and the place where it was is Trump hating country, like the jurisdiction.
Right. And that's actually a good point. That's actually a really good point here, because the appearance, and this is going to sound really odd, but the appearance of bias might be helpful here. The appearance of he's in front of a pro-Trump judge may be very helpful for purposes of justice, for the appearance of justice.
Yeah.
Odd as that sounds.
Absolutely. And I say, will that make the job of the prosecution harder? Possibly. There's more chance of getting someone on your jury who's diehard, ride or die for Trump, and you've got a judge who seems to be in his corner. Okay, make it as hard as possible. And if he gets convicted, you get to say, "Oh, really? Yeah, that same judge who fought tooth and nail to make this whole thing go away at the beginning is really biased against you? Come on."
Yeah.
So
exactly.
not to say that I think that's going to sway the ride or die Trumpers, because they're in their echo chamber. But I'm saying make it as hard as possible. That's fine. And there's another sort of point behind that I would love to emphasize here, which is to say, I don't care that much what the outcome of this case is. I really don't. I want the process to work for him the same way it works for everybody, for better or for worse, right? But what I do think is the very fact that he has been indicted is so significant. And
Yes.
it's such a positive statement that our democracy, that our institutions still have the strength and the power and the infrastructure and the values to do what needs to be done in a case. Because
Right.
my biggest fear through all of this was that they would have the goods, but they wouldn't have the means to do anything about it because of his power and his status and everything else. And
Right.
what people need to understand, and it's why the right is freaking out so badly right now, is indictments matter. No matter what the outcome, when the federal government, with all its power, comes brought to bear on you, it's a bomb that
Mhm.
goes off in your life. And everything is different from that point on. And the punishment, the consequences, they start now. He's going to be overseen by a court. He's going to have restrictions on his freedom. He's going to be worried as fuck about what his future holds every single minute of every day. Even him, I think he
Yes.
will. He's going to spend a lot of money. It probably won't be his. it'll be
Yeah.
it'll be from his PAC, his supporters. But
Yep.
and all this stuff that's going to come out will damage his reputation with some people.
Indictments are not nothing. There's punishment there in and of itself.
Yeah.
And there are collateral consequences just from being indicted. But I don't know if I completely agree with you how much this is going to affect Trump, in a negative way at least, because within minutes of him announcing that he was indicted yesterday, he was already fundraising off of it. So I'm sure this has been a hell of a boondoggle for him and his cronies and his PAC.
Well, definitely, they're gonna raise money, and the people
Yeah.
that are giving money should know that it's just going to his lawyers.
Mhm.
And
Oh, I'm sure
so,
he's getting a nice cut too.
well, probably. And the other thing is there's a lot of bluster about, oh, this is just going to solidify his nomination. This is going to be a great thing. This is the biggest mistake the Democrats ever made. Well, first of all, the Democrats didn't do this.
Right.
The special counsel did it. And
Well, not even him. It was the grand jury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The grand jury, who are made up of private citizens in the state of Florida. You have no idea who that was on that grand jury, but they found probable cause.
Right.
But so there'll be a lot of bluster, like this is actually a great thing for Trump and blah, blah, blah. But deep down, everybody knows this is very, very serious.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think back to my college criminal justice professor, Hal Popinski, who he taught this class called Alternative Theories of Social Control. And it was the first guy that opened my sort of eyes to, the way that those with the least amount of resources, people, minorities, all that they bear the brunt of this criminal justice system. And he had something called the lightning rod effect, which is power gravitates towards modes of least resistance. And that is something I've experienced my entire career. People without resources, without education, without are the ones that we see most of the time in being subject to charges. And that, again, that's what I was worried about. This is a powerful guy, arguably one of the most powerful people in the world. And could the system take him on? And Jack Smith answered today, yes. All right, Mark Gallenbaugh. Well, thank you so much for
Doug.
The updated analysis, and we'll see what happens. That's it for today, but before we go, I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to you, the listener, for spending time with us today getting set for sentencing. Whether you're a lawyer, someone who could use the help, or maybe you're just a true crime buff who loves the inside scoop on how this whole thing works, I am so glad you're here, and I hope you keep listening. If you're interested in knowing more about what I do, mitigation videos, case consults, live teaching, on-demand educational content, books, articles, all of it, please visit www.dougpassonlaw.com. I'm Doug Passon. Until next time, hang in there. Wait a minute, that's a stupid way to sign off on a podcast about sentencing. Hang in there. What's the matter with you, man? I guess they call that gallows humor. Sorry. All right. Well, I will see you next time
on Set for Sentencing. Bye-bye.